welcome to another episode of Becoming the Light from the Shadows of Abuse. And today I have an amazing, very interesting guest with me today. As always, I'm going to leave her to introduce herself. She knows herself much better than I do. Her name's Anna Osherov. I hope I've got that right. Anna Osherov, and she describes herself as an eventologist. And she's been on a very interesting journey to get to where she is, clearly overcome some obstacles in the way. So I'm going to hand over to Anna. She can tell you all about herself now, and then we'll hear more about how she got to where she is. Hi, Anna. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. Yes, you did get my name right. It's Anna Osherov. Today I am an eventologist, a speaker, trainer, consultant in the art of event marketing. I'm also the founder of Flintt, Holistic Business Hub, and the Eventologist Training Methodology, which is what I do with my life today.
Wow. So you must have been, because I mean, obviously we're recording this at the time of the COVID pandemic. So I'm guessing that organizing and running events is very impacted at the moment. How are you working your way around that?
Yeah, look, the event industry has definitely been hit hard. I'm very lucky that I focus on the side of event marketing, and that covers things like digital events as well. And now there's so much more opportunity than ever before to get out there and position yourself as an expert using online live events. And so I've just taken the methodology of face-to-face live events and put that through to being able to do online live events.
Oh, great. So great that you're able to make that transition there. And obviously might inspire other people as well whose businesses are impacted, kind of think, oh, is there some way that I can transition by doing something like that? So how long have you been doing this now, did you say? How long have
I've been doing specializing in event marketing for the last 2.5, nearly 3 years. I've been working in the space of communications and marketing for the last 14 years or so. So it's been a while, but it was just a really interesting journey to find that niche of event marketing and supporting business owners on how to plan, promote, present their own successful events, because they really do empower us to be able to build our brand and our business more than nearly any other marketing channel.
Amazing. And I know, like, right through your journey, if we go back now, because obviously this isn't where you started, like all of us, there's a journey to get to where you are. And I know that communication and learning to communicate has been a huge part of your journey and what you've had to do. So just take us back now and tell us all about your very interesting journey to get to where you are now.
Sure. So as I mentioned, Osherov comes from the USSR, which is where I was born. It is now known as Ukraine, but when we left on a humanitarian refugee program, it was still the USSR. So at the age of almost 8, so it was 2 weeks before I turned 8, I was told that tomorrow you and your mum and your dad will be leaving the country and you'll be traveling overseas to Australia, and off we went on a really interesting journey. We obviously left on a humanitarian refugee program as a Jewish family. So there was a program that enabled Jews to escape from the USSR, and so mum and dad, who were very young at the time as well. Mum was 25 and dad was 30. Packed up what we could, and then went through to Austria for 2 weeks, and then spent 6 months in Italy waiting for our visa to come through to be able to come to Australia.
Now, to me, that just sounds like, I know you said to me earlier that at that age you don't remember kind of really being impacted by leaving in that way, but to me it just seems such a huge thing, because I know we emigrated from the UK to Australia, and my boys were 9 at the time. But we spent 18 months preparing them. You know, they were very involved in what we were doing, all the plans and everything. And I just cannot imagine have like told them that the day before, well, you have to leave all your grandparents, all the family, all your friends, everything that you know here is just going. So I just can't imagine the impact on you. That's why we spent 18 months, you know, integrating them into that idea. But I know you said for you it just seemed like a big adventure, and you really loved Italy.
Yeah, look, I think I didn't have enough time to process and think about it. So there wasn't time to get anxious or to be scared or to say goodbye or to cry. I was just excited that I had an opportunity. I was living with my grandma and grandpa at the time. So mum and dad were living in a different apartment. The reason for that was that my school was closest to my grandparents' house. There was a school that was more accepting of Jewish kids, which I didn't know at the time, but that's why I was living with my grandma and grandpa. Mum and dad were in a separate house. So I was just excited that I got to go with my mum and my dad. I got to go on an adventure. And the whole, I think, process was so engaging and involving. You know, life kind of changed like that.
Yeah.
I remember we flew from the USSR to Austria and we were in Vienna. And I remember my first supermarket. Like I remember walking into a shop that had everything in it. And to this day, I have a fascination with supermarkets, but I just remember walking in and just like, this place has everything rather than, you know, here's the butcher, here's the deli, here's the fruit, here's the, you know, there wasn't such a thing as a supermarket with an abundance of food in it. So, you know, for me, that was great. Like, wow, what an experience. And then I remember we had fruit delivered to our house in Austria. We were only there for 2 weeks, but that was, I remember getting bananas to the house. Like, wow. And then we went to Italy and, you know, we found a place to live. We were in a duplex sharing with another family, and there was young people around and there was no school. We were sort of taught by Israeli group that would come and teach kids, because we were, you know, on a Jewish program. They'd teach kids about our heritage, so we got to learn all the Bible stories and run around with other children. And so that whole experience for me was a lot of fun. For my parents, it was definitely much more difficult because they had to leave everything behind. They had to denounce citizenship. They were, you know, considered a lower class to the people who were living in Italy. So for my parents, it was a lot more of a traumatic experience. But for me, the trip through Italy was really fun and exciting. I think I probably experienced more of the fallout from changing countries when we arrived in Australia. And then, you know, no English language skills. Being a child, I was the first one to learn how to speak English in my family. So then I became the translator for my whole family. You know, grandma would drag me to the shop.
So you came to Melbourne as a family. You were how old were you then? So
I was 8. Yeah, so I turned 8 in Austria. So we got here in September, and I turned 9 in February. So yeah, I was 8. I came with my mum and dad. Then my mum's sister came, I think, within a month, and then my grandparents came within another 3 to 6 months.
But you're saying that you were the only one who spoke English?
Yeah, well, none of us spoke English when we arrived. And then as a child, you learn language really quickly. We pick up languages and, you know, reflecting on this, I think as a child, you learn to attach sounds to objects rather than trying to translate from your own language. So, you know, you look at a table and you go, that is a table, not, in Russian at the stall. In English, it's table. You're not trying to translate sentences. You're just picking up words and attributing them to, you know, things, feelings, etc. So I learned to speak English within 6 months to be able to communicate quite, you know, fluently with the people around me, whereas, you know, my family took a lot longer. My grandparents never really became fluent in English. My parents did, but still not to the not at the speed and fluency as what I did as a child.
Right. That's a huge responsibility, though.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I think the hard part. Well, there's two parts to this. One is as a person who, like, if you're the only person who can communicate, then you're the person who's dragged around with you. So to the shop, to the doctor, to the pharmacy down the street, whatever that might look like. Any communication that had to happen, you were the person responsible for it, and then you had to really understand what, like, say, for my grandma, I had to understand what she was saying from her perspective. Say exactly that to the, shop attendant, then understand what they're saying from their perspective, and then reiterate that. And then you get this like, no, I don't think they understand what I'm saying. Like, well, they do understand what you're saying. You're just not getting the answer that you want, but I can't change the answer.
Wow, yeah, that's a huge thing. And you know what, as a child, to have the insight to try and do that, to try and understand that someone's trying to say something and someone's responding from their perspective, and that you've got this whole dynamic. It's not just about the language. You've got this dynamic to navigate as well. It's no wonder you became a great communicator, understanding messaging and everything else. It's no wonder you went into marketing. But I want to go back to something that you said, and you were talking about how in Russia you were considered as a lower class, but obviously as a child you weren't particularly aware of that until you came to Australia. So just tell us more about that, and how what you remember about trying to reconcile yourself to that, and trying to become accepted within Australia.
Yeah, so I remember, so when we first arrived in Australia, for the first 3 months, I was at a Jewish Orthodox school because you got a free 3 months there. And then we moved to a public schooling system. So I remember going to a public primary school in grade 3. And at the time, I was the only child that was different. Now we look at children in our primary schools and, there's such a diversity of kids. But at the time, I was the only child that couldn't speak English. So that made me different. It meant that I had trouble making friends. And being a naturally exuberant and positive person, it was really difficult. I remember thinking that if I could run faster than these kids, then they'd be my friend. And to this day, I've got a friend who I met when I was in primary school, when I first started. And like, I remember trying to outrun her, thinking, oh, if I can run faster, she'll be my friend. And I remember as we became friends, she'd make fun of my accent. And it got to a point where it didn't bother me anymore. But initially, I felt really just the need to fit in. What was important was to be popular, to have friends. I remember looking back at a diary I started grade 5, and it had like an entry saying Anna's road to popularity. I thought, wow.
Oh, totally
um,
understandable, though, from a child, and even as adults. And this, I think it's so good for people to hear that there's so many people that suffer. They describe themselves as people pleasers, the need to be accepted, the need to fit in, and it comes at us from all directions. This journey plays out in many ways, and of course our number one human need is to be accepted and to fit in. And here you are going through all these changes as a child, just trying to do just that, whilst trying to be the translator and everything else for your family. It's an amazing experience and journey. So and I know that even before that, I know you've reminded me with the word exuberant. And we talk a lot on here. People as children, we lose our identity. People lose their sense of self, and this whole feeling of not being good enough. And I know you said you had that as well. Something about in Russia, how everything is all about being the best. And so tell us more about that, and just explain what you said to me earlier about how it's very, very easy in Russia to feel that you are just not good enough and to lose your sense of self.
Yeah, so as I said, I was quite an exuberant child. I was always up and about and, getting into everything. And my parents naturally, and plus I'm an only child as well. So there was no practice before this. So I was always in trouble. So everything I did was wrong. Sit down, don't run, don't scream, don't go over there, don't speak to this person. And that is just the way that we were raised. We were raised to, I guess, in a way that instead of positive reinforcement, it was always a wrong, bad, don't do this, don't do that. And so then that plays out for me is the whole question, well, what is right and how do I do
Yes.
the right thing? If I'm always wrong, then I'm never enough. Then that, for me, that plays out as never good enough. I don't know how to be good enough for, my parents or my grandparents. But then that comes through, how are you going to be good enough for your friends, or good enough to get that job, or good enough to get to high school, university, business,
Yeah.
however that is. And that sort of consistently has played out in my life. And it took a long time to get to a point where I had to stand back and do some personal development and growth to delve into, even understand that there was such a thing of the fear of not being good enough. I remember that for me being an aha moment.
And this is so
Yeah.
good for us to understand, not just for ourselves, but as parents. As parents, we need to understand how as adults we have a sense of safety and security and just self-assuredness, really, that our children don't have. And all of these small negative things that we tell them just feed into this feeling, as you said, of them absorbing that they are not good enough and that they can't be good enough. And I think it's so important for us to be aware of that in our parenting, about what we're doing and what the effect is.
Yeah, I do agree. I'm not a parent yet, or not sure that I will be, but completely agree with you. And I guess my parents had me really young, and so we learn a lot of the things that we grow as humans, we grow as parents, we grow as adults. And so I've seen the change in my parents as well. They had me, mum was 17, dad was 22 at the time. And so that's they were young adults themselves. So
Yeah.
for them, it's also been a growth journey. And so I guess hindsight is really good for everybody right now. But yeah.
And it's, of course, it's never about blame. It's about understanding that your parents were who they were. They were also products of their own experiences. They were parenting in the way that they had been parented, because
100%.
they don't. And it's always about, even when we feel that our parents have done something wrong, or that they could have done things differently. It's about having compassion for who they are and what they must have been through themselves, for some of the things that they did, or for the knowledge that they didn't have, the experience they didn't have. It's about understanding all of those things, and just allowing all of that to feed into who we are. Yeah, it's never about blame. It's always about understanding how we became who we are, and how the people that helped us do that became who they were. It's fascinating when you start to put it all together. So, but clearly you did pull it all together. So just tell us how you through your years once you were in Australia, and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, so I went through primary school, I went through high school, I got to year 12, and that need to fit in played out all the way through. So even in BCE, I was still more interested in, having fun and being accepted than in getting my career or getting my schooling right. But then what I realized in year 12, I went, better do something about the fact that, I have to make a decision. And, my family, it was always I was going to go to university. University, it wasn't like a do you or don't you. It was like, that's just what happens. And so I decided to do 12 subjects in year 12, which is one to two more than most people do. It didn't really help me get a better academic score. I didn't get the enter score that I wanted. But I was very lucky to still get into university, and I studied communications. And, I learned so much through university. I moved out of home. I made friends. I really sort of grew into my own. But when I finished, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I spent a year working, managing a pet store. And then I spent 4 years of my life traveling. And I wholeheartedly believe that you learn so much about yourself in those times. You think that, I thought that when you go traveling, it's always fun, it's always amazing, it's, you're always happy, but you're a human being. And so you're not always happy. You can't always be having fun. There was definitely moments where things were great. And then there's moments when you're still facing depression, you're facing fear, you're lost somewhere, or you might have been robbed, or you might be sick and by yourself and not have friends around you. And all of those things are such growing experiences. I remember the first time I had this realization that I'm by myself and I can be whoever I want to be. I was in Munich, and it just so happened I was traveling with a friend of mine for 4 weeks, I think. And then there was a 4-day break, and then I was meeting my boyfriend at the time in Paris. And I ended up being in Munich on my own for 4 days. And I just remember waking up the day after my friend left, and I was like, wow, I can do whatever I want today. And then as I was meandering around Munich on my own, looking at markets and shops, I just had this realization that we spend so much of our lives being the person that others expect us to be. And it's not an intentional thing, but it just ends up happening that, you said you're a child. So then you act like a child around your parents. You're a friend. And in this group of friends, you act like this. You're a leader in this group. So in this group, you act like a leader. And so you kind of fall into these patterns of being a type of self around a certain group of people. And I just remember having this complete freedom of, I can be whoever I want to be today. I can meet people and say hello or not say hello, and I can just wake up when I want to wake up and go where I want to go. And it was just this immense sense of freedom. I just have this real clarity of how that felt, and having that aha moment. I would have been, 24 at the time. So not, not too far in my life to what I look back now, but I just remember having this amazing aha moment of, it's possible to be who you want to be. And that was a big growing
Yeah,
moment for me.
that's a very, very significant realization, isn't it? That you, as you are, is just fine.
Yeah,
You're absolutely fine. And the people that don't agree with that, well, they don't have to be in your life. But there will be plenty of people who do agree with that. That when you are, this is so powerful, that when you are totally yourself, the right people will find you fascinating and amazing and everything else, and the wrong people won't. And that's absolutely fine. You're not here to be right for everyone. You're here to be right for you, and that to be right for the right people. That's it. We're, most of us are right for a small group of people, and that's fantastic. That's just brilliant. Just gives you the freedom to just be you. That must have been wonderful.
yeah, yeah. And it's interesting you say that. And then we end up, so at the hostel I was staying at, we end up doing a tour to Neuschwanstein, which is a castle in the middle of the forest in Germany, and near Munich in Bavaria. And I was like, oh, I really want to go see this. And I remember like talking to a couple of people and getting them along to come on this tour. And this castle is what the Disney built Disney World on. Like, so that
Oh,
castle of
okay.
Disney,
Yeah.
it was modeled from this particular castle, and it was just breathtaking. And I remember standing there with people who I've just met, having the best time looking at this beautiful structure. It was a
Yeah.
very like pivotal moment in the travel and growth and self-discovery period. And I really believe that everybody should take the time to travel and have those experiences where we are very much, it's very selfish, but like I guess, growing experience.
Well, and the thing is then, like, it might seem selfish at the time, but at the end of the day, if our journey is to become the best version of ourselves,
Mm,
then everyone around us benefits from that.
mm,
If we are constantly being our best to the best of our ability, and we are using travel, I mean, I agree with you. I learned so much from traveling. I just love it. Different culture, languages,
mm,
history. When all of that feeds into you, as you say, you just make these incredible connections with people who are also on this journey of
mm.
discovery. They're either discovering themselves or the world or something. And I think that when we do things for ourselves, it's important to remember that what we're doing is becoming the best version of ourselves. That's where we're trying to get to, and that can only be positive for everyone around us.
Yeah, completely agree. Some of my best friends to this day are people that I met while traveling. I might have only spent 2 weeks with them in that particular time period, but I've gone on to continue those relationships for the last 15 years of my life. So it's definitely an amazing growing experience in
Yeah, that
world of
shared
travel.
those shared interests, experiences, that shared energy and attitude, very
Mm,
definitely. Yeah, I'm the same. Some of the best friends I've got are people that I've met through travel plans and things like that. So yeah, I agree with you. You know, I'm in Melbourne, and not in Melbourne. I'm in Australia.
I'm in Melbourne.
You're in Melbourne. But a couple of my best friends are in the US. You know,
Yeah.
I've met them through traveling, and I'm very sorry at the moment that I can't meet up with them at the moment. But that's okay. We're communicating by other ways. But that
Mm.
connection, that enjoyment of who we all are is there, which is a very powerful thing. So yeah, so how wonderful to get to that point where you realize that being you is just great. So tell us where you went on to from there, because now when you realize that being you is enough and it's acceptable and it's great, you're operating from a different platform now, because now you have
Yeah.
certainty in yourself, which enables you to move forward in a different way.
Yeah, that's true. I think it also brings it makes you brave. Sometimes you make decisions that are
Yes.
still brave. But so I went on to spend 6 months in the French Alps learning to snowboard. I've never snowboarded before in my life, and it just so happened that my boyfriend at the time, he was playing in a band in England. His band was playing over the winter season in France. I'm like, sounds like a great idea to go over and learn to snowboard. And as relationships do, within the first sort of month or so, we split up, and then I was still there, but all of a sudden I'm newly single and dealing with the loss of relationship and feeling a lot of anxiety and feeling not good enough um and a lack of self-worth. And then I decided I'm going to learn to snowboard. I was very lucky that I had a friend join me. So she flew over. She wasn't having a good time in Australia, so she flew over, and I remember her opening the door, and I was laying in bed, not really able to get up, and she's like, "That's it. We're no longer doing this. You can't keep living here. You can't keep sharing his bed. You have to get up. I've organized some snowboards for us. I've organized someone to teach us. You're going to get up and we're going to go and learn to snowboard, and then we're going to find a place to live. You can't do this anymore." And, being yanked out of that sort of self-pity and wallow was really really powerful. And I stayed the whole season. People are like, why would you stay? Why wouldn't you leave? For me, I think I don't like giving up on anything. I'm like, I've got to see this through. And it was a huge growing season for me. But also, I learned a skill which I then did spend the next 4 winter seasons around the world learning and growing. And
Snowboarding.
snowboarding for me was such a eye opener of what's possible. I wasn't very good at it. It didn't come naturally to me like it does for some people, and for some people it doesn't. So, but I was adamant to learn. I was out there nearly every day. I was practicing my sport. I found people to teach me. I, found friends who were better than me, and I would follow them down the mountain. And I remember being told, if you're not falling, you're not learning. And so I was like, wow, it just totally shifts your thinking on the day, where you spend the whole day going, I don't want to fall over, to, wow, if I'm falling over, it means that I'm, pushing myself outside of my comfort zone. I'm learning how to do something new. I'm falling over, but I'm getting better at it. And, I sort of that season, and then I spent 3 more seasons in Canada learning how to do that. And I wholeheartedly believe that part of the tenacity of pushing through in business came from learning how to push beyond the boundaries of self-doubt and fear and uncertainty. I spent so many days on the mountain crying like, oh, this is hard, it's beautiful, I want to do this. But yeah, it sort of really taught me a lot about how I respond to things that are difficult in my life, that it's possible to learn something new even if it's not easy. The wonderful things that come on the other side of that. So, the experiences that you have once you've pushed beyond that. I've had the most amazing experiences on a mountain, when you've got the best view and you've got lots of snow and you're there with the people that you love, and they're the people that are there, like if something goes wrong, they're the people that are going to keep you alive. So you really connect on a level that is totally dependent, but then you're also dependent on each other, having a good time and learning from each other. And it's a really beautiful thing to have experienced, which I'd never experienced before.
So what I love is, it sounds as if your whole snowboarding experience was a huge metaphor for life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny when I reflect back on that. That's exactly what it was. And I think about I've spent 4 seasons, but I've also been all over the world. Japan, Argentina, New Zealand, Austria, America, Canada, France, like all over the world snowboarding in Australia. And it really does have a bit of a metaphor for life. You see so many things go right and go wrong, when you're young and impressionable and you're living so far away from your, family and your normal friends. And all of a sudden, it's very different to travel, because travel, like when you're going from place to place, you're looking at the new experiences and the history and, soaking in that type of experience. But when you're spending a season somewhere, you are there for 3 to 6 months. You become part of the community, you find work, you spend time learning and growing with the people around you, you form new friendships which are only seasonal. So there's a lot to be said for that type of learning and growth as well.
Yeah, amazing. So that whole journey from lack of self-worth, thinking you're not good enough, to where you are now, and how easy. I love this illustration. How easy it is for us to feel that we're not good enough, and to be uncertain in ourselves, and then getting to that place where realizing that no, you're absolutely fine as you are, and where it took you from there. And I love that whole snowboarding as a metaphor for life as well. It's fantastic to see all the lessons coming through there. So tell us a bit more about you you now, exactly what you're doing at the moment. How can anyone get hold of you if they're interested in help with their business or hearing more about the things that you've been through, that you've overcome? Because I'm sure there are people who this whole ethnic displacement where you
Mm,
don't have connection to your roots and things like that.
mm.
That's very difficult for some people, and clearly you've done an amazing job of handling all of that and overcoming that and creating a great life for yourself.
Thank you. So, yeah, so as I said, now what I do is I really work with visionary leaders in their own businesses and support them to go from the unknown to an industry influencer through the power of live events. So, we really go through how to plan, promote, and present an event that's going to bring you both visibility for your brand and visibility for your business. And a lot of that comes down to learning to overcome the fear of creating content, becoming visible both digitally and inside your event,
Yeah,
understanding the purpose of the events for you within your business, so you're not just always giving and people pleasing, but you're actually doing something that's going to give value both to your business and to your clients. And so that's where the Eventologist banner comes in. So really, best way to get in touch is look for my name, so annaosherov.com. On that website, you'll find information about training packages, about the speaking that I do, about me in general, and you can always reach out and get in touch, book a chat, whether it is for business purposes or for personal purposes. You know, I love sharing these stories with schools and universities. I've spoken at schools and universities, sharing that journey, really that journey of coming from the USSR, going traveling, getting a degree, getting into business. Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways to connect.
yeah, and of course we'll put the links in the show notes. So thank you so much, Anna, for sharing your story and your journey. Do you have any kind of wise words of parting to leave people with?
Yeah, I think my wise words I would use would be always dream big, never give up, and then don't let setbacks stop you.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, so 3 very important points there. Yeah, so thank you so much for that and for everything that you've shared. Really appreciate having you on.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anna.